Hi, and welcome to Bite-Sized Bat Reps, where we bring you great battle reports without taking up a great deal of your time. So this is going to be a little bit of a different video. I had a chance to play in a divisional tournament the other day. Actually, it was a two-day event, and it wasn't really conducive to taking lots of photos and making a proper battle report. But I just couldn't resist that fantastic splendor that a divisional game of By Fire and Sword is. So I decided to throw together this quick report, show you some photos, talk about one of my games, and yeah, and just share the fun. So here's a picture from one of the other games. This is the Transylvanian division facing off, I think, a Lithuanian division, and it's one of the newer armies. So I couldn't resist taking a photo of this army, which is painted really, really nicely. And here's another shot of the table setup. And this is a little bit into the game, I guess, with the fighting around the village solidifying and kind of heating up. And oh, here's another close shot. And I guess here you can see the dismounted Haiduks walking into the village to occupy it. And this is another game that I just couldn't resist sharing because it's just crazy massive. So you have on the right side, I think somewhere in like 90, 92 points worth of Polish Lithuanians. And on the left side, you've got 68 or something like that points of the Muscovites. So there you go. That's a lot of models on the table. And it just looks fantastic when it's all laid out and when these two armies clash. And here's just another different shot of the same battle. Okay, and so moving on to my own game, it was the second game, and it was against the Polish-Lithuanian division that was significantly bigger. I think I had an 18-point disadvantage. So I brought my basically the same division as I was building up with the mercenary veteran infantry, national veterans for the main force, veteran rapiers in support, and then Polish light cavalry allies, which were actually played by a friend of mine. So he brought his figs and fielded a regiment as an ally, which was kind of fun because then it was a two-person game per side. And on the left side, similarly, the Tatar allied regiment was fielded by someone else than the main player, and then you had Polish light cavalry in vanguard, Polish cavalry, Polish elite cavalry was the main force, and this was a massive, massive regiment, and then some dragoons in support. And here you've got the setup, and I'm defending on the right side as the Swedes, so being the smaller side, we decided to defend because it's crazy to attack with a Swedish division. And we're also using the extended division play house rules that let you play with some interesting scenarios. So you get 3 objectives. One is your own secret chosen objective, your opponent chooses a secret objective, and then there's one shared known objective. So the shared objective was to defend this forest over here, and it's worth 2 points, and as the defender I was able to deploy my units in there. Then for my secret objective, we chose to defend our deployment zone, which is basically this rectangular area. So at the end of the game, the opponent can't have, I think, 12 bases in this area. So for a defensive army, this is a really good scenario to take. And we didn't know this at the time, obviously, but the Polish-Lithuanian secret objective was to get some of their bases off the board, and I think you've got to get 10 bases off the board to meet the objective. So he'll be trying to gun for the sides, or for my edge, my table edge. Deployment-wise, the infantry division sets up, or regiment, sorry, sets up here with a strong defensive line with some field fortifications in the forest. I set up my artillery battery on the hill so that it can rain down fire into this kill zone. The main force of cavalry sets up here to kind of cover the field, and the Polish allies set up on the right side to be our responsive force that can go left or right. And on the Polish side, this is the vanguard, so he sets up his light cavalry up front, or kind of out of the deployment zone, and then there's one cavalry regiment, the main force, which is massive, and the Tatar allies, which I'm really worried about because these guys always give me trouble. There's another shot of the same game, turn 1 deployment. My lines. Oh, and this is my other cavalry regiment, the mercenary veterans. So this is 10 bases of rapiers, 4 in armor, 6 without. And so I put them here in the back basically as a reserve force because they can sneak out through here to enter the field. They can support the right side or the left side, just depending on how the battle goes. So I liked having this regiment here in reserve. And the artillery battery with a commander, which is a really good thing to have, and the ammunition wagon, which is an absolute must-have with the Swedish artillery battery, because this way you can be firing all the time and really causing problems for your opponent. So this is, I think, after turn 1, after the movements, a couple things happened. So we rolled up a bunch of effects to equalize the forces, and I ended up, I think, with 1 major panic, 2 major march losses, and so you can see that his main force here got disorganized. They're the ones that ended up with panic. So all the units withdrew because it's all cavalry, so they all just kind of pulled back to the edge, and their other regiment remained. And I'm really happy about this because this is a massive hitting power. So any turns that we can burn on them being disorganized and milling about in the back is a win for us, because we just want to hold the line and defend. And the Tatars are now circling around the side, so it's obvious that they'll be pushing it to here to attack. And looking at how the Polish player was playing, I kind of thought that he chose the secret objective of taking this corner, because he started moving all of his forces down this way, and we didn't have very much defending here, so I kind of assumed that that's what he was trying to do, is just get as many bases as he can into this corner and seize this this objective. But and yeah, instead of getting off the board. And on this side, the light cavalry is taking heavy losses from my artillery, so I had a chance to basically shoot at them with, you know, all these guns, and I ended up killing a base and withdrawing these guys and starting to cause them major problems. So that I think made him a little bit gun shy to pull the trigger and actually attack this forest. And so yeah, so these guys basically stood back, and while this regiment was waiting for support because it just didn't have enough punching power to punch through all of these rapiers. Here's a close-up on my crazy gun line with the field fortified infantry and my commando musketeers. Oh, and yeah, at this point I started taking the rapiers to, and I basically wanted to move them out a little bit just to get them into play so they're not completely hidden, and these guys reform into a column as well so they can start making their way this way to counter that gigantic Polish cavalry wave that's coming out around the corner. Oh, sighting down the gun line. This is a shot from, I think, maybe turn 3, so a couple of important things have happened. First of all, you can see that the light cavalry has been significantly depleted here, and there's a couple of bases missing here as well. And actually, this regiment has at this point reached its breaking point, and it's just on the breaking point. So that means end of every turn, the commander is trying to pass a morale check on a 7, and he had 3 command points. And so because it was quite early in the game, they decided to essentially sit on all of the command and keep on boosting it by 3. Thereby, he would keep passing it automatically. But this regiment doesn't do anything for the rest of the game, and so this forest and this whole defensive area is left completely unmolested till the end. And as you can see, this force is moving this way, and the cloud of Tatars is moving this way, which is making me a little bit nervous because there's just not enough here to stop them. And we're holding the line and waiting for the attackers to make their move. Close up on the Polish forces, and they're kind of massed cavalry formations that are circling around. Okay, so this is a little bit further in, probably another turn or so. So the main thing that happened of note, and it's a very static game. It's a very different way of playing the Polish-Lithuanians that I haven't seen before. With these guys just waiting, and you know, the ordered ranks of the Swedish veterans being perfectly happy to defend and hold the line and just keep on shooting with the artillery. But the thing that's happening on this side is that you've got this 12 bases of Tatars moving up and shooting, and they actually killed the base of our light skirmishing horses and made them break and withdraw. And we're starting to set up what we're hoping is a trap where we put our Cossacks here and here, and if we can get the Tatars to kind of commit to going here, then we can charge them and run them off the board. But there's still all of this to worry about, and then all of this to worry about. So it's not looking that good. And yeah, and of course another force of the Hussars. And I don't have a picture for this, but there's a really cool little thing that happened, I think next turn, where yeah, the Tatars move in here, and then these guys turn around and they move in here with me taking these two bases of the Raiders and pushing them up here to basically just get in the way. So this is one of those little, maybe a little bit gamey, but it kind of works for this army, where I took two bases. They didn't fit into the squadrons nicely, and I know they're going to die, but I can afford to lose two bases with this big disciplined regiment, and I just put them right in front of the Polish Hussars. So I think the Hussars were basically here, and I put my Raiders kind of here, and so when they charged, they really couldn't redirect, and they ended up charging straight into them, opening up their flank, and then I just fired cannonballs into their flank, ended up killing a base, and they failed their test, and they actually withdrew. So that was just like a nice little action where I was able to get rid of one of these guys. Here's actually a better shot. I probably should have used this one to explain all of that, but so it goes. Okay, so this is another couple of turns in, and this is after we sprung our what I thought was a really clever trap, but I'll explain to you how it actually ended up. So two main things happened. These guys, these Tatars were here, and these Tatars were here. So the situation was that we had Tatar block here and a Tatar block here, and then the unpainted Cossacks charged into them. The Tatars withdrew, but got stuck on the table. The Cossacks completed the charge, beat them, and ran them off the board. So that was great. So now at this point, I've got my Cossacks here. Now these guys charged these Tatars, but because they were kind of here, their bases ended up, I think one of the bases got caught in the light wood, so they ended up charging 10, not 20, so they didn't make the contact, so the Tatars just casually sauntered away from the combat. It wasn't even a breakaway move, so they didn't have to move this way into their own forces. They just whipped around the forest, and the Cossacks ended up standing here, and the winged Hussars just formed up their ranks and smashed right into them, killed I think 3 bases, and these guys, over the two turns of combat, these guys broke and fled, and then rallied, and then ended up somewhere here. So these guys just rode right through this line, and then these unpainted Cossacks were sitting here, and so this other block of Cossacks that's right there, the Panzerni, they just smashed into them and pushed them off the board. So yeah, that trap was sprung too early, and actually my partner who was commanding this force was thinking that maybe we should keep waiting, and I was thinking that I was just really worried about all of these Tatars converging here and firing on us, so I wanted to get them off, but I think we probably should have, because now these two Cossack formations were exposed, and they took massive casualties, and that regiment reached its breaking point as well. And so here's what happened after those combats. As you can see, the Hussars are now well into basically our side. Here's one 3 base formation of the Polish Cossacks that used to be 6 bases. The unpainted Cossacks are here somewhere off the board, and then here these guys are disorganized, and they lost a couple of bases as well because they got pushed back. So we ended up losing a ton of bases for only 6 of these Tatars that fled, and all of this Polish cavalry is sitting here, and I don't have much to counter it with. So we're desperately re-establishing a line here with these 2 units, and I got my mercenary veterans out here, and so I'm thinking that these guys won't really stop this wave, but maybe they can delay it, maybe they can do something, maybe, but I'm just reinforcing this flank. In the meantime, the Dragoons finally made it here, dismounted, and they're kind of occupying this forest. So everyone's pushing to this side, as I explained, which as I said was a little surprising because the actual objective was on the other side of the board, and my infantry was sitting there with nothing to do, just sitting on the objective. And I'm pretty sure they would not have been able to hold it if all of this came down their side. And then the other major thing that happened is we finally skirmished in the middle. So two things happened. There was a 6 base Cossack force that charged, and my Reiter block and these Cossacks countercharged. We met in the middle, fought. These guys lost a lot of bases and they fled. So they're now fleeing. These guys pursued and reestablished a line here. And the next turn is going to be very interesting because you can see Winged Hussars here, positioned very well. More Cossacks in support, So there's a ton of hitting power just sitting on the flank here. And my guys are a little bit exposed and sitting in the in kind of charge range. I do have these guys in support, but that's just 4 stands, and then I've got all of this to worry about as well, and only these units to contain it or skirmish it. But the good news is that this is end of turn 6, so I'm thinking that with 2 turns left, there just isn't that much damage that can be done, and I have my objectives secured still, so I'm actually feeling pretty good about this at this point. And unfortunately, because it's a tournament, it turns out we never got to play. So we had to call the game at this point, which was very not satisfying because this is just when I think the game would have broken either way. And so we ended up with a major victory because the Polish-Lithuanian force wasn't able to get their 10 bases off the board, so they didn't satisfy their objective. We satisfied both of ours because our deployment zone is clear, and the forest, which is over here somewhere, is uncontested as well. And we actually ended up inflicting quite a bit more casualties than they did. But let's face it, I mean, this would have been really epic to see this play out. So I think in the end, they would have been able to easily get 10 bases off the board. We can't stop them, and if that's what they wanted to do with their 30 centimeter move, I'm pretty sure in 2 turns they would have been able to get some bases off. These guys probably would have been beaten, and I think we would have reestablished the line. But because the Polish Light Cavalry regiment of ours was at the breaking point, we'd have to really work hard to keep it in the game and get lucky to pass those morale tests, which might have happened, might have not. Now in the middle, middle is where it was super interesting because this regiment, and actually I think these guys are part of it, is I think 1 or 2 bases away from its breaking point. It's basically there. It's sitting on some wounds. I have tons of ammunition still because I keep on refilling, and I would have probably been able to kill those bases, almost certainly. And then these guys would be testing for break, and if one of these regiments broke, then the other ones would follow with their noble brothers' special rule. So once one of these cavalry regiments go, they all start wavering a little bit. And the way the lines are set up is, he's got this massive hammer here that probably would have gone here. If I wasn't able to withdraw just with initiatives, then he probably would have beat him here. But then I've got, these guys to counterpunch, and if I can go into this side, then I can do serious damage. And these Cossacks might be able to come here, but at the same time, with the artillery firing, who knows? It was really too bad that we just didn't have the time to finish this final turn. And of course, my veteran infantry is sitting behind the fence and just doing nothing. These guys, I think these musketeers fired 2 shots maybe before they had no targets, and there you go. That's all they were able to do. So we just wanted to share some final thoughts. This is the picture of that spectacular divisional game between these 2 massive divisions. If you haven't played a divisional game of By Fire and Sword and you're playing the skirmish level, I really, really highly recommend you trying a divisional game, even if you just bring in a regiment and someone else brings in some of the other forces, and you kind of have 2-on-2 battle, because it's something else. The game really changes. On the flip side, I actually didn't really enjoy the tournament format because the divisional games just take so much time, and they're so complicated that I don't think they're really suited for the kind of highly competitive, precise game that you want to play in a tournament. It's much better to play these games when it's scenario based and it's kind of the story of the battle, and you're just there to have a friendly competitive game rather than win at all costs tournament game. But either way, division games are really, really fun, so I highly recommend them. Hope you enjoyed this report, and I'll be back with a regular report sometime later to finish up the narrative. See you next time on Bite Size Bat Reps.